Hello, my name is Samantha Peña, and I'm here alongside Ariana Ramirez. And we chose to do our case study on Danny Sullivan. Danny Sullivan is a character from the show A Crowded Room. The show follows Danny and the crime he is convicted to. We hear his story and the events that lead up to this crime. According to Danny, this crime had been committed between two people, himself and Ariana. We later find out that Ariana is not a real person, but one of his personalities. We know this because the person conducting the questioning is Raya, a psychiatrist, who allows us to see Danny's point of view. When it comes to Danny's environment and culture, all you need to know is that he grew up in a very toxic and abusive household, and it was all because of his stepdad. We find out that Danny had been sexually abused by him, and it is revealed that this is where all his trauma is rooted from. What is dissociative identity disorder? Dissociative identity disorder is also known as DID, the presence of two or more distinct personality states. DID is usually a reaction to trauma to help a person avoid bad memories. What are the symptoms that Danny is experiencing? Danny is experiencing perceptions of people and things around him that are distorted and unreal. Distorted and unreal. The second symptom is unbidden intrusions into awareness and behavior. We see this when Danny is handcuffed while being questioned by Raya. He has this moment where he dissociates and tells her, I can get out. Danny himself couldn't do this, but we know that his friend Mike could. This is when the audience starts to realize that Danny's stories aren't making sense and that the people in Danny's stories aren't real, but are many of his personalities. How might this disorder affect people's lives? Professionally and social. Overall, it will be difficult for them to have clear communication between people. They will have to tell people and explain to people what the disorder means and what it consists of. And they will have to find multiple ways to cope to better themselves in certain environments.
Different treatments towards dissociative identity disorder are both shown in the crowded room. It is psychotherapy, in which is patient focused on their disorder and tries to understand what conditions put them through this disorder, as in more trauma oriented. Not only that, but it is also a way for those who have dissociative identity disorder to cope with their stressful situations. Art therapy is another way which allows, in a way, an insight on how it is in the mind of someone who has dissociative identity disorder and how they view their memories. The ethical concerns when it comes to this is the imbalance of interactions between the psychiatrist and patient, in which one could be dumping more than the other should be inputting. Not only that, but the confidentiality rule also ends up breaking trust between both the psychiatrist and the patient, which doesn't allow for the patient to express itself as fully as they want. And boundaries should be placed on where they want to meet according to the patient's needs. For art therapy, it is plagiarism in the art that they could be expressing, which could lead to the patient being being seen as influenced by other types of media. Not only that, but also censorship could be a reason why art therapy would not be the most reliable, in which it could be seen as uncredible, especially with certain things not being able to be expressed. During the show, it was difficult to get treatment for Danny because he suffered from coming from an abusive home and was trying to seek for help, but most times it was shut down. Not only that, but he struggled a lot with money. Even though he was from the suburbs, he struggled a lot with money since his mom was the only provider. His dad killed himself, and his stepdad was a homebody. Their reliability in the crowded room is good because it does show us the insightful perspective of how it is to have DID and shows how the spectrum of characters are. Not only that, but it also talks about real trauma experiences and does relate to those who have come from those trauma experiences, and allows us to see how people really do have different coping mechanisms when it comes to it. But it is very controversial because some people believe it is only for money reasons that this show created an insightful view of DID. The stigmas and the consequences. When it comes to dissociative disorder, a lot of people are seen as violent and often tend to be seen as predictable, when in reality, it is more complex than that and can lead to these individuals to be discriminated against and mistreated because they are seen as violent. They need to be kept down and calmed down. But based on this misinformation, it has been more easier to discriminate against those who have DID. The cultural aspects of in this show were mostly collectivism, since it was in the 1970s, which allowed more people to believe that this was fake, that was just a criminal, and they didn't really see into what he was as a person. Instead, they just saw him as a group of individuals who are troubled. The diagnosis, how he got diagnosed in this film was he was getting interrogated after a Rockefeller Center shooting, which allowed him to become more self-aware of the characters that are inside of him, and ended up causing him to finally get in control of those. I believe if it was in a different time, definitely the diagnosis would be so different because people at the time believed that the disorder was not real. So it all depends on what time, the situation, and the circumstances it has come to in order to get a true diagnosis.